You found your way to Blood Moon Radio. I'm Coraley, and this is where we follow the threads the world wants us to drop. Today on Blood Moon Radio, I'm joined by Daniel Anderson, a somatic spiritual guide who works with empaths and highly sensitive people. Our conversation weaves in between the spaces of shadow and light. We talk about the value of intuition, voice, and residing in authenticity. Daniel's work is rooted in one simple principle: spirituality should make life more livable. This is Inner Sanctum. Welcome to another episode of Blood Moon Radio. My guest today is Daniel Anderson, and he is joining us all the way from Wisconsin. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to get into this. When I was reading your profile, something that stood out to me is you had said spirituality should make life more livable. What does that mean in practice?
It means in order to fully understand what's going on outside, you need to fully embrace everything inside first. The answers we all chase after our entire lives are already within us. We just need to slow down enough to clear out the noise and then listen and trust our intuition.
Coming back to intuition is such important work. I've always been very intuitive, but throughout the course of my marriage, just the nature of that relationship, I didn't lose it. It was there, but it silenced.
Yeah.
And so the last 3 years have been a process for me of coming back to trusting my inner voice and working with healing, all of those things. It's so important.
I can feel you there too. I went through a tumultuous marriage and an even worse divorce, and I had completely lost who I was. I actually, at one point in my life, my ex-wife took my son from me. I lost another job. I lost the relationship with another woman that I was with at the time. And I was about to lose my apartment because that woman took all of the rent money and spent it on booze. So here I was, feeling helpless, lonely, unworthy of anything, about to be homeless, losing my kid once again. She did that a lot. And I was actually on the verge of really finally acting on suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
In that moment, I can describe it. I was sitting on my couch, and it just felt like a complete darkness around me. Like a storm was just literally going over my head. And I was sitting there crying my eyes out, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to turn, and all these voices going, "End it, you're worthless. Told you, see." So I started thinking of the plan, how I was going to do it. And then all of a sudden, I literally felt an invisible hand on my shoulder and a calming voice in my head and a calming energy around me that said, "You're better than this. Snap out of it. You're worth more, and you're here for a reason. You may not know it now, but you'll discover it soon." That was in 2012. It took an additional 10 years to finally really try to get back all the gifts that I've had, but it's been a real roller coaster the last 3.5 years now. With everything I've learned, with the ability that I've gained through pendulum divination especially, I've got 4 notebooks filled with guidance from angels and my ancestors and guides and ascended masters and everybody else that comes through.
What is it about dark nights of the soul that lead people to this work? Because it's not an uncommon story that we hit our darkest hour where we can't see a way out of everything, or where you're honestly questioning what on earth have I done that there's this much heartache, and
Mhm.
how is there this much grief all at once? It brought me to wanting to do this, and I had thought about doing this, but I hadn't been brave enough before, or maybe I had the capitalist voice in my head saying, that's not real work to have a podcast and talk to people about their spiritual journeys and finding magic in the world and what they're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. It's all unconscious programming that we all get from our parents, 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 parents. It just gets passed down and down and down. And by the time it gets to us, the information that they, frankly, the bullshit they pass on to us is so outdated, but we just take it as gospel because, well, mom and dad said so. And as far as why we need to go through that dark night of the soul, I'm not 100% certain, but really you can't have the light without the dark, and you can't have dark without light. And it's just funny because I'm a recovering Catholic and was just sick of all the structure and the rules and the dogma and the guilt and God is this and God is that and you're separate and there's nothing you can do to get into God's good graces. You're a sinner, blah 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 blah. But what I've come to know now is that there is no separation. We're not this body. You're not your body. Every 7 years, every single cell in our body changes, but we don't. So we are the people that are observing life that we're living. And that means if we're the conscious observer, we are also a part of the creator. So God is not separate. God is us and we are God. And it doesn't matter how you want to name it, source, the universe, the creator, Allah. We're all one and the same. There's one overall consciousness and then 6 billion egos.
You work with people who are intuitive but exhausted. What do you think is exhausting them?
Answer is actually really simple. What is exhausting, and I can speak of on this by experience, is especially for people that don't fully realize they're sensitive and they're empathic, we absorb energy. We absorb energy from just the space around us. We tend to absorb the emotions and the energy of those that we're in contact with. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And even if it's good, sometimes you go home and then all of a sudden, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. The things that were said still run through your head. The things that weren't said still run through your head. I could have done this different. And what people need to realize is that 99% of the things we carry energetically and thought wise and in our behavior and everything isn't ours to carry. And we can put up a boundary and we don't have to build a wall around ourselves. But like for me with spirit communication, just to go off on a little aside here, I talk to spirit, but then I have earthbound souls looking for help. So they come through to me all the time and beg for help and please help me and please help me cross over. So I do that too. And it was getting to the point I went to a spiritualist service at one of the churches I go to, and we do mediumship there. And the Reverend there, Reverend Debbie, she's a really powerful medium. She came up to me and put her hand on me. She's like, "Are you a medium?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't really consider it, but yes, I am." And she's like, "Because I see a big group of spirits behind you, all raising their hand, going, me, help me. And normally the ones that they see during service are coming to them to give a message to us." She's like, "You've got this giant group of beings behind you raising their hand, but they're not here for me to give you a message. They're here for you for something." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? I know because I could feel them behind me. The entire service had my head down, just trying to build a mental border around me, step back. And I didn't really know how to do that until maybe 6 weeks ago. I opened up and it was like a dam opening and just flooding, information flooding into me, different energies, different spirits flooding to me. And so I've learned now to do a little ritual at the beginning of any sessions I do, that this is who I'm open to contact with. That channel is always open to my higher self and the beings of light. And if you're an earthbound soul, you have to wait in a waiting room or away from me. I picture a door with a lock on it. And when I unlock it and open the door, that's when I invite them in for help. And I've seriously gotten some very interesting stories from the souls that I've helped go from the darkness into the light.
Is there a common thread between working with spirits and working with your living clients?
I'm seeing it more and more every day, actually. The thing that holds the spirits back is really the things that hold us back as living people. And that's lack of forgiveness, lack of understanding, to a certain extent, lack of compassion. And the whole root of my work really is to uncover where the root of each issue is. And it really only comes down to a few different things. But basically, really what's the same and different at the same time is forgiveness. The answer is forgiveness. And that's what Jesus taught, but then people misconstrued it to mean other things. And we just have to really start with forgiving ourselves. How I work somatics into it is I'll bring up a pain point and try to go down to the root, and then I have them stop and feel where it settles in their body, and then do some controlled breath work, and then releasing all that pent up energy, and then telling themselves, I forgive myself unconditionally, and try to find that inner child that is holding that energy still. Because, people say heal our inner child. Well, each and every little thing that happens to us creates a different version of an inner child that just stays frozen in that moment. And then they all decide to pop up whenever a trigger happens. So it's not just one inner child that needs to be healed, it's literally thousands. And so my work tries to get to the root of it.
You're connecting forgiveness with nervous system regulation. And I think
Yes.
most people in general view forgiveness as a moral act. So help them connect forgiveness with the physiological.
When we forgive, it isn't for the benefit of the person that we're forgiving, even if we're forgiving ourselves or certain parts of ourselves. It's not for the forgivee's benefit, it's for the benefit of the person doing the forgiving. Because if somebody did you something wrong and you hold a grudge and you're like, I'll never forgive this person, all you're doing is adding to a chain that's going to keep you on a plane that you don't want to be in. It's just forgiveness is kicking the people out that are living rent free in your head. And forgiveness is peace of mind, and it is your nervous system finally going from fight or flight to, okay, that's over. I don't have to think about it anymore.
I had a couple different thoughts, but I think something that stood out to me while you were talking is because I do a lot of lecturing on the witch wound and I write about it a lot. And certainly the podcast has a bit of a feminist slant, and women are socially conditioned to not be angry. And so while you were talking about letting things go, I was wondering about the process of acknowledging and allowing your feelings, your emotions. Maybe you're angry at someone and you're trying to get to the forgiveness. How does someone embody and embrace the things they're feeling as a whole instead of circumventing them like performative spirituality asks us to do?
You just have to be very mindful of not bypassing what's making you angry. You do have to face it head on. If you have to write it out, write it out. Say, I can't believe you did this to me, you awful person, whatever you want to say. Put it on a piece of paper and then burn it and just let it go.
Through it, not around it.
Yeah, go through it, not around it. I've spent my entire life going around it, and I keep ending up in the same spot.
Taking the same lesson.
Yep, it's exactly that. It's when you go around, you don't just go around and keep going. You go around and around and around and around and around, and you have to realize that there's an exit to that roundabout, and it starts with just letting go.
I see the photograph of the bleeding heart behind you. Do you have a special relationship with bleeding heart, or do you just like the photo?
That's actually my wife's picture. That's her favorite flower, and I keep it here to honor her, and she loves it, and so I think they're gorgeous flowers too.
That is very sweet. You use the word containment. Can you talk about what containment looks like in a session? When you're changing the language around something, it has immense power. So, containment instead of the idea of fixing, or is that what?
Yeah. To me, containment just means you have to give your experience a name. It's almost like in movies about demons and things. If you can get the name of the demon, you can control it and it no longer has power over you. That goes the same. I mean, not our inner issues are technically demons, but not in a biblical sense or a fantasy movie sense. They're things that just hold us back and keep us down. And when you can name it, it no longer controls you. So before I was talking about root causes of everything, and I've pretty much narrowed it down to things that I call the three silent survival patterns. And it's comes down to a safety of being, a safety of authentic expression, and a safety of desire, action, and receiving. I know, for example, with me, I think I finally figured out my issues with my money problems. And that's when I was a kid, I used to want to go to the store and get candy. So I would go into one of my brother's big change jars and take a dollar 50, $2 out of it in quarters and go get candy, and then I'd get caught. First, that brother would beat me up, and then he would drag me to my parents, who then would, I'll say it, physically abuse me for about 45 minutes. So that is a safety of desiring and receiving what I desire route. So that's actually still something I'm working on overcoming myself. So it's like throughout our lives, we do have a fear that we're not allowed to exist. I know, especially people who consider themselves witches, mediums, psychics, the people in the woo closet have a fear of being authentically themselves because mainstream, normal, conventional thinking says that's all nonsense and you're making it up or you're crazy. I think it's time for people like us to take that woo clause and kick the door down and tear the entire thing down and just let it out in the open. Don't be afraid. It doesn't matter what people think of us anymore. And the world is really leaning that way now anyway. We are seriously coming on a shift of human evolution basically right now. With all the BS that's going on, it's a collective dark night of the soul, I think, right now.
It is
And,
difficult times.
I can tell you one of the best things I've ever done for myself is I stopped watching the news 3 years ago.
I'm always
I'll
walking a
tune in
line
once in a while. Yeah,
between
sorry.
activism and knowing what's going on because I do feel inherently called to that. And I think as I've come into understanding myself more, because I'm in my 40s now, so 40-year-old women were a little bit less like caring about what other people think, and definitely our hormones push us into that authenticity, even if we didn't want to go there. But it's always been a part of me. You know, I grew up in a really redneck family, very conservative values, and I have always been very in touch with my instincts. I've been intuitive my whole life, right? So I've always believed we're all connected. You know, in a family, it's an oxymoron to me that families that hunt and spend a lot of time outdoors and care about conservation and things are also the most conservative and vote for these people that destroy the systems that they care
Yep.
about. But that's where I grew up, right? So I was always this soft leftist liberal. Like I can remember having full on arguments with adults when I was like 9 because I've always had these beliefs and been vocal about them. But I've been in such an exhausting place in my life that I have sheltered myself a bit. And I haven't felt able to continue to do that, even though I'm still in a little bit of a precarious, I have to guard my energy space just with how my life
Hmm.
is right now, because advocacy, I think, is so important. I don't know that silence is the way, and it's a difficult line to walk, guarding your energy versus, hey, this is really wrong and we're past a point now. What's going on is way past a point. It's out of hand.
Yeah, I made my mom angry the other day. She's unfortunately not doing well, but
Sorry.
she's still a staunch supporter of the president. And I kind of made her angry the other day when I was with her and said, he's a necessary evil. And he is, because, again, you can't have enlightenment without the BS that's going on right now. And it's all, everything's been planned out. It's all divine timing. It's all one grand plan. So you just got to put on your seatbelt and enjoy the ride.
I feel you on the family thing. Of course, I'm in Canada, but I wouldn't say that my family, no one comes out and says they're in favor, but they make excuses for that behavior and try to highlight things that they think are good. So I will push back, and it's funny because I'll be saying my point back and suddenly I'll realize the entire room is mad at me. I've wrecked family dinner. Everybody's mad at me because I'm not being quiet.
Right, exactly.
Like, oh, but using voice, healing the silence, that I think, especially, it's sacred work for women, but I see it a lot with men being able to embrace themselves wholly too. Healing voice, using your voice is a privilege, and it is sometimes the most difficult work, I think.
Absolutely is.
If someone has overridden their intuition for years or maybe their lifetime, how do you help them begin to restore their inner authority without creating dependence on you?
The first step is actually kind of funny, because when we override our intuition, it's usually because we've got that negative voice going through our head telling us that we're not good enough, or we're not going to succeed, or don't even try this because what if you fail? What I learned, because I call him my inner asshole. I've had the loudest one for my entire life, just screaming constantly. And it did come from what other people have told me. And when you hear that you're not good at something, or you don't measure up, or you don't do this and don't do that, or never will, then you take those beliefs on yourself. And then they start compounding, and then one little thing goes wrong, and then those thoughts start popping into your head again. So, what I've learned to do with mine is, rather than have it screaming at you in the voice that it screams at you with, change it. Change the voice. Change it to like Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse. Can you take that seriously? Change it to Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. How would you be able to take, you're a worthless piece of crap, if it's said in one of those voices? Or like SpongeBob yelling at you. It makes it easier then to identify that that thought's not true, and that's not who you really are. And then it also gets you to think, since this sounds nonsensical, it is nonsensical, what is the part that is true then? So then you start to focus less on it, that you're not going to amount to anything, or you're no good at anything. Then you say, well, what's true? Well, I was able to do this and did it really well, so that can't mean that I'm worthless and not capable of anything. I proved it there, and then I proved it here. And once you start to switch that a-hole up to more the positive inner cheerleader voice, that is when you start listening to your intuition. I've discovered, even when doing other podcasts, I don't know where half of the stuff is coming from that I talk about even. It just starts flowing through and it's being channeled. And that's kind of what intuition is. It's just our higher self and our guides and everything just kind of flowing through us. And I know my intuition definitely saved my life and my family's life on one specific occasion, literally. We were at a July 3rd fireworks in downtown Milwaukee, and beautiful thing. And we're just sitting on a hilltop, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people all around us, including police and horses and foot patrol and everything. And all of a sudden, I started hearing this thought in my head, you need to get up and you need to leave right now. I'm like, just thinking, okay, well, is this worry because of all the traffic and it's going to take 3.5 hours to get home? But it still persisted. You need to leave and you need to tell your family, get up and leave right now. Finally, after a couple minutes of it just feeling overwhelming and feeling it in my gut and having it loudly booming in my head, I finally said to my family, I know I normally say we should go just to beat traffic, but I've got this feeling that something is desperately going to be wrong soon and we need to leave. So we did, and we ended up going somewhere else and finished watching the fireworks, so that was all fine. But literally not 5 minutes after we got up and we left and got into our car and drove away, there was a shooting 3 feet from where we were sitting.
Growing up in Canada, I live like 45 minutes from the Montana border. America has always been this, we're similar, but we're different. There's this interplay of cultures, and America has been on the world stage as this leader since World War II. And I felt this like kinship. There's also this hope, I guess, hope and vibrant energy of the people of the USA is what I felt growing up. And the constant gun violence and the lack of wanting to rein that in has always struck me as opposite to how my view as a Canadian interacting closely with Americans all the time over the last 20 years, maybe. It's so frequent. It feels like self-hate almost in a way. Like, I don't know. I want you guys to figure it out so bad and just be this beautiful, hopeful, strong nation that I think you are. You know what I mean? And it's difficult. I'm getting teary-eyed talking about a country that isn't even mine. It's difficult to watch when you said that. I'm like, your family could have been hurt or gone, you know? And that's your existence. Sorry, I went on a rant.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It is becoming normalized and it sucks.
Yeah.
Something's got to change. And I think the more you talk about your work and the more I talk about my work and just trying to bring light into the world, I think all we have to do is change the world for one person, and that creates a ripple effect. And what I hope to do for the rest of my life is create a ripple effect that turns into a tidal wave.
That's a good metaphor. We're talking a lot about shadow work in a North American society in general for so long. Anything negative is avoided. It's been encouraged to only display the good or the happy to your neighbors, to the outside world, even sometimes to yourself, that suppression of what your inner landscape looks like or where you've been wounded. What does shadow work look like when it's approached through understanding versus confrontation or through avoidance? I think when we think about working on things, it's like a battle versus a meeting something and processing it.
With shadow work, the shadow is there for a reason. And these things keep popping up in our lives as traumas and as survival patterns and whatever else. It's that part of us, that child, that shadow, just needs to be acknowledged. Like, I see you, and not the I'm looking at you right now. It's I see through you. I see what you meant for me. I see what you did for me, and now it's you created protection, but you don't need to be in protective mode anymore. You're free to go and play, and I've got this. That's the thing right there, is acknowledgement of those wounded parts of ourselves, forgiveness to those wounded parts of ourselves, acceptance of those wounded parts of ourselves, and just saying, you don't have to protect me anymore. We've been through a lot. I've grown a lot, and I'm strong enough to take care of each and every one of you. So y'all can let it go and come out and play sometimes. Don't just show up and be on edge. Come out and have fun. They say look at life through the eyes of a child, and that's because all they do is they look at everything with wonder and awe. And They haven't been told by society how they should feel or what they should do or what they should be or what they should think. I oftentimes watch nature programs and I'll see these little baby mountain goats jumping from cliff to cliff to cliff and then having to scale down these sheer walls. And I say to my wife, "Hey, you know why they can do that?" And she's like, "No." I said, "Because nobody told them they couldn't. Why people think they can't do something is because somebody told them they couldn't. We don't realize how much power we actually have and the things we can actually do. It's mind blowing that we don't know what we don't know. There's such a vast amount of things, endless possibilities out there. Just because you can't see yourself doing something or you can't see the possibility of something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If that were the case, you could take a spoonful of ocean water and say there's no such thing as sharks and whales and fish because they're not in your spoon.
I think certainly we've been living in systems for a long time now that are meant to diminish our personal power and our autonomy.
Hmm.
Even you talked about what was Jesus talking about with forgiveness. When I study religion, I've always been fascinated by it, but I can see the purpose of organized religion and the dogmatic nature of it is taking things people inherently knew and practiced for since we've existed and twisting them into a way that they have to be metabolized through this outside source and they're used as measures of control.
Hmm.
How does someone know if they're living from inner truth versus reacting from old patterns?
When you're living from your old patterns, everything feels like a struggle. You could be at a job that you love, but you still hate it in a way, and it's still draining and it's exhausting. And just everything in your life feels like you're paddling upstream in class 5 rapids. You're going against the current. And when you're living from inner truth and the guidance of your higher self and being in aligned with that, then everything that you look at from the outside seems to get easier. Things change the way you look at them. And it's more like finally turning your boat around and going with the current. Just everything seems smoother. Everything seems more peaceful. And you just know when you're in alignment because you could sit and do something. I was working on some aspects of my business yesterday and just got so into it. Felt like 10 minutes passed and it was 4.5 hours later. So time flies when you're having fun, yes, but time flies when you're in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing.
Flow state, getting into flow state.
Yep.
You're a man who works in emotional and spiritual depth. What do you think men misunderstand about sensitivity?
Oh, I could take this in so many places. Most of them not very good. Um, there used to be terms for people that were overly sensitive,
Yeah.
derogatory now.
Hmm.
Um, Boys were always, it's, I think, less so now because as generations get older, they start realizing these things and try to pass on different thought patterns and different knowledge to their youth, their children. It's becoming more acceptable now,
Hmm.
but in the 1800s, boys had to become men when they were 5. And like my generation, I'm Generation X, so I was really never allowed in the house. I was forced to raise myself, drink from hose water, not wear a helmet, and just be home by the time it was street lights. So men are taught to suppress their emotions because that's if you show emotion, you're effeminate or something. And it's a closed belief by people who believe they are their job title, they are how they feel, they are their body, they are this physical, and not fully grasping that we are that, yes, but we're so much more. So, men were always taught that they have to be the strong one, they have to be the stable one, they have to be the one who don't cry, they have to be tough, macho. And so they just kind of believe it and they choke down their emotions, and then it can lead to outbursts of violence. It can lead to alcoholism. It leads to other ways of suppressing it.
I've always been fascinated by the patriarchy making things female bad and you don't want to be like that and harming men in that way, like not letting them embrace their wholeness. But it's also just the hypocrisy of it because men always want to be around women. They crave them. They want that space where they can lay down their energy and be soft, but they spend their time making the feminine less, not just at the harm of women, but at the harm of themselves. And then
Exactly.
you've got the added layer of none of us would be here without a woman. Right? Like how did we end up at things feminine or bad? You don't want to be like a
Hmm.
girl. I'm like,
You're right. And it's ridiculous because we are all born with masculine energy and feminine energy. And like me, I'm in touch with my feminine side. I'm happy to say that. I've always gotten along better with women. I love hanging around with my guy friends, but I always liked it more hanging around with women. I've always been that way and never really realized, okay, it's just that part of my energetic blueprint. It's part of who I am.
I didn't ask your permission at the beginning. I usually do a tarot pull. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
While you were talking, I was shuffling, and at the bottom of my pull, the Emperor came out, which I thought was really interesting given that we were talking about men. The Emperor card is very masculine and positive quality masculine embodiment, right? Structure, protection, but in a non controlling way. When I pulled the cards, I got the Chariot off the hop, so willpower and direction, the Ace of Wands, and the Three of Cups. Ace of Wands is about ideas and inspiration, Three of Cups is about joy and growth. The cards really do reflect the nature of the conversation. If someone feels intuitive but overwhelmed, what is the first stabilizing step they could take to begin to slow down and process not being overwhelmed?
Simple step. Let's say they're in a big group of people, and it doesn't even have to be that. If they're just feeling energetically overwhelmed, go from the room you're in, walk into another room, but before you enter the other room, put your hand on the threshold, the door frame, and say, the energy I'm carrying stays back here. I'm crossing this threshold into a whole new space. And that creates a type of boundary. You're leaving one area so that the things that were going on in that area don't have to attach themselves to you while you go into another.
It's a lovely little ritual. I had to get good at practicing energetic cleansing as well as boundaries, which I really wasn't good at growing up or for a good chunk of my adult life. And I always do I release any energy that's not mine. I call my energy back to myself. But that is really lovely with the use of the doorway as a threshold. I imagine that would be really useful if you're somewhere socializing because it can be overwhelming the energy in big social settings when you're
Oh, yeah, for
feeling
sure.
so much
Hmm.
from everybody. Before I get to our final question, I always like to ask guests if there's anything they want to talk about or anything we haven't covered yet that they were hoping to talk about.
If you don't mind, I would like to read two oracle cards, messages from the universe
I
that
would love that. That would be amazing.
I like using my pendulum to ask for guidance, and I'll actually feel it pull to the
Yeah.
card that it wants, and it just had me pull two. And the first one says, and I think this really will hit for you. The reason some people have walked away from you for no reason has nothing to do with you. They've been removed from your life because the universe is taking you next. They have already served their purpose in your life. Let them go and keep moving. Greater is coming. And then the other one that came up was a chapter in your life is coming to an end. Rest assured that beautiful things are ahead in this next chapter. Let go of all things that are out of control and move forward. There are more beautiful things ahead than any you leave behind.
Those two cards complement each other so well, and they definitely have deeply personal resonation for me. I've gotten much better at allowing relationships to move if they have to, but absolutely the person that I talked about, the relationship that I opened myself up to, I have never had such a hard time processing losing someone. I still think about him every day. Like I don't think I've ever loved anyone so purely, but
Right. Yep.
yeah, it's so much to process. And I think we are not great in North America at grief. When you meet someone that you align with so well and have
Hmm.
such a strong connection with, it's very difficult to grieve and to hold that love. I know it's not going to go away, right? I have to hold it without giving it to the
Yeah.
person,
Hmm.
you know?
Just remember things with fondness and not bitterness.
Yeah. My last question is, what does it mean to live spiritually rather than to fall into performative spirituality?
Just be true to yourself. Be yourself. That's really all you need to do. You don't have to wear the masks of what society thinks you should be. Do the thing, say the thing, and don't worry about what's coming next.
To connect with Daniel, visit his website, www.coachdanielanderson.com. We have launched a new playlist on our YouTube titled Lore. It's a space where we explore mysteries, the unknown, folklore, and mythology. If you don't already subscribe to our YouTube channel, head over and check it out. We would love to see you there for the exclusive content offered only on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, remember, the truth echoes louder after dark. Whispered, unfiltered, waiting to be touched. See you soon.